Facebook critics have accused them of COVID misinformation on the platform, and this would support that theory. And it takes two to tango, or in this case, three. You have the public sharing a fear-mongering link that maybe they shouldn't. You have the Chicago Tribune maybe writing a headline that is fear-mongering and inaccurate that scares more people, and then Facebook building a platform that whips it into a frenzy. Everybody is at fault. The Tribune article has since been amended and was most recently updated in April. Here is the new update at the top of the article. Update. 2 weeks after getting a COVID-19 vaccine, a Miami doctor died from a condition that causes internal bleeding. Although it developed suddenly, a medical examiner's report said there isn't enough evidence to rule out or confirm the vaccine was a contributing factor. Okay, just like I said, you probably shouldn't have printed the headline to begin with. It's fear-mongering, and if people are resistant to getting the vaccine, printing it in a headline like that and scaring people, it might not be the most thoughtful thing to do. You might want to think it through and maybe use a little judgment as a journalist, as a publication, as a publisher, as whoever who wrote the headline. And as we know, in a lot of cases, the journalist themselves doesn't write the headline. Some social media or somebody who's really good at getting clicks writes it. Also from the New York Times, and here's the quote, the report also showed that a Facebook page from the Epoch Times, an anti-China newspaper that spreads right-wing conspiracy theories, was the 19th most popular page on the platform for the first 3 months of 2021. And this is where Facebook is super weird. These like Epoch Times headlines and these weird publications that you've never heard about, they've been around for a short period of time. They have gotten a lot of play on Facebook because they play fast and loose with the headlines, et cetera. Not that the Chicago Tribune is doing much better. So the New York Times got this information by obtaining leaked emails sent by Facebook executives, they say. According to the article, Facebook executives debated whether releasing the Q1 report would be a PR problem for the company. Duh, obviously it is. The CMO, Alex Schultz, initially wanted to release it, but eventually wound up agreeing to shelve the report. This shows you how insincere the executives at Facebook are. They literally are thinking about themselves and the PR for the company and the share price, as opposed to what's in the best interest of society and this important discussion. And just like you shouldn't expect the journalists out there to be acting in your best interest, I wouldn't expect Facebook to act in your best interest. You need to act in your best interest. You need to be an independent, critical thinker. Hopefully this podcast helps you. All of this is very interesting because Facebook released their Q2 report last week. VP of Integrity Guy Rosen said the social network had undertaken a long journey to be by far the most transparent platform on the internet, according to the New York Times. I think that's patently false. Twitter is public. The data is public. Twitter would be the most transparent platform on the internet. Perhaps Reddit, with all their voting being public and comments being public. I think that's an actually factually incorrect statement by Guy Rosen. After the article dropped on Friday, Facebook faced a bunch of online criticism, obviously from journalists as well. So on Saturday night, they decided to release a PDF of their Q1 transparency report via Dropbox, interesting, which was unavailable at the time of this recording. Who knows why? It could be they're overwhelmed by people clicking it. On Saturday, Facebook's head of comms, Andy Stone, posted a thread, and man, it's got to be tough to have that job, on Twitter describing the difficulties of defining misinformation and what he thinks Facebook is guilty of. Here are the most important tweets from that thread. Here's the quote. We've been getting criticism for holding an internal report until it was more favorable for us and then releasing it. Getting criticism isn't unfair. Getting criticism isn't unfair. Okay, this is word salad, but it's worth taking a closer look and making note of some of the components of the story. That's more weasel words. You can tell this person's a comms person because they talk like a weasel. Andy Stone on Twitter continued, news outlets wrote about the South Florida doctor that died. Okay, correct statement. When the coroner released a cause of death, the Chicago Tribune appended an update to its original story. New York Times did not. Would it have been right to remove the Times story because it was COVID misinfo? That's a great question. At what point should Facebook be taking stuff down and interfering with the news process? I think the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune would tell Facebook or Twitter or any social platform, let us do our jobs. Andy Stone continued on Twitter saying, of course not. No one is actually suggesting this, and neither am I, but it does illustrate just how difficult it is to find misinformation. He also added, we're guilty of cleaning up our house a bit before we invited company. We've been criticized for that. And again, that's not unfair. So he uses a metaphor here, which is a key part of trying to persuade you to feel a certain way about the company and the job they're doing. Cleaning up their house before we invited company. Obviously, everybody wants to have a tidy house before you invite people over. But that is a way to try and convince you to not be critical of Facebook. Really, the problem with Facebook is this algorithm and their perverse desire to increase time on site by any means necessary and not really being thoughtful about how their algorithm works. Why does the algorithm need to have these things spread? Why don't they just put a cap? No news story can spread crazily, or stories can only spread within your friend circle times 2 or something. They could throttle all of this, which of course would throttle maybe the time on site, which they can't do because they have quarterly reports to hit. And Zuckerberg would never do it because he wants to keep the stock price high. We're cleaning up our house is a reference to not publishing the Q1 results because they didn't look good, obviously. Again, he's just using a metaphor to try to be convincing. He's a comms person. He knows the power of metaphors. You're being manipulated by those metaphors. I'm just unpacking it for you. And meanwhile, the Q2 results look better, as most of the top posts are memes and response bait. Those asking a question like, oh, what are your 3 favorite movies or whatever? Or what food is the most disgusting? And that might be a great solution for Facebook here. If they want to have a pragmatic solution for staying out of the fray here, maybe they just keep politics and news stories out of the top most shared stories. They keep them throttled to friends of a friend or maybe 2 hops away and not let them trend in some huge way on their system. Is any of this sketchy by Facebook? Everything Facebook does is sketchy. That's their MO. They care about growth above all else. And really, I think at this point, I think Zuckerberg should resign as the CEO of Facebook and let Sheryl Sandberg take it over and let her make the decisions. And I think she would make more thoughtful decisions than he does. Or let somebody else take over and let somebody who isn't as tied with their net worth to the fate of Facebook run the company and do a better job. It's time for management to turn over at Facebook. That's my honest belief. There's other things Zuckerberg could go do with his life in the same way Bezos or Bill Gates have, and he's young. He should go spend his fortune doing other things, whether it's philanthropy or building other businesses or buying other business or being a capital allocator or playing, with Oculus or spin out Oculus and make it a new company. Facebook is also facing scrutiny, obviously, from the Biden administration. You remember in July, Biden said the platforms like Facebook are killing people due to the amount of vaccine information, which is, let's be honest, a true statement. And it's not that Facebook's killing them. People are conspiracy theorists. They want to believe this stuff. There's a certain number of people out there who will fall for these conspiracy theories. I think they're inclined to believe them because sometimes they do turn out to be correct. Sometimes the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is time going by. And I know Biden, I think, pulled back on that. He's not wrong. I think the bigger picture here is it's time for Zuckerberg to go. And I think he should go right now. Put somebody in place, put Sheryl in to be the CEO for now. Maybe she's interim, maybe she stays forever. And that would be just a much better look for Facebook. And he should just give himself a promotion to chairman of the board. According to the Washington Post, White House officials have alleged that many Americans are reluctant to take the coronavirus vaccine in part because of false or misleading information they have read on social media services, including Facebook. And Americans didn't get exposed to this information at scale. So it is a real problem. My belief is that these platforms need to look at the algorithms and make decisions that are in the best interest of society, not their own growth. Do you ever wish you invested early in some of the best performing IPOs of 2019 and 2020? Well, our crowd investors did, and now you can join them in what's next. With our crowd, accredited investors have access to invest directly, easily, and most importantly, early. Our crowd investors have benefited from our crowd companies IPOing like Beyond Meat and Lemonade, or being bought by companies like Intel, Microsoft, and Oracle, and my favorite, Uber. Our crowd's professional VC researchers identify promising companies and funds across a range of sectors, stages, and global locations. Our crowd is investing in medical technology, breakthroughs in ag tech and food production, solutions in the multi-billion-dollar robotic industry, and so much more. So here is an easy call to action. You're going to just go to ourcrowd.com/twist, OURCROWD.com/twist, and begin reading deal memos, and you'll get to invest in these amazing companies their researchers are working on. If you're interested in investing, you need only join our crowd. There is no charge to join. Just go to OURCROWD.com/twist, OURCROWD.com/twist to open your free account.